My name is Benjamin Croft. I am 71 years old, and my life, the one I had built so carefully over 48 years, ended on a Tuesday. It started with a phone call. My grandson Leo called me while I was in my workshop, the only place I feel truly at peace. The smell of pine sawdust was in the air, and the steady hum of my lathe was the only sound I needed. The phone's ringing was an intrusion. I shut the lathe down. The sudden silence felt wrong. I picked up the phone. "Grandpa?" Leo's voice was thin, shaky. "Grandpa, I just saw Grandma at a sleazy motel with 5 men in suits." I almost laughed. I wiped sawdust from my glasses. "Leo, what are you talking about?" I walked to the workshop window. Through the glass across the lawn, I could see my back porch. And sitting right there in her usual wicker chair was my wife, Anna. She was reading. "What are you talking about, kiddo?" I asked again, my voice softer. "She's sitting right here on the porch. I'm looking right at her." Anna must have seen me. She looked up from her book, her silver hair catching the afternoon light. She smiled. She waved. I waved back, a knot forming in my stomach. "No, Grandpa!" Leo shouted into the phone, and his panic felt real. "I swear it was her, at the Starlight Motel, the one off Route 9. I saw her clear as day. She was getting into a black Escalade with these guys. They looked, I don't know, dangerous." "Leo, you're mistaken," I said firmly. "It was just someone who looks like her. Your grandmother is right here." "Grandpa, listen to me," he pleaded, and his next words stopped my heart. "It was her. She was wearing it. That ugly green brooch, the one you always make fun of." A cold spike drove straight through my chest. The green brooch. A gaudy piece of costume jewelry, fake jade set in cheap gold-colored metal. Anna claimed it was a family heirloom. I thought it was hideous. I knew that brooch. I knew it as well as I knew my own tools. My mind flashed back to last week. I'd teased her about it at breakfast. Anna had laughed and said, "Oh, stop it, Ben." The clasp finally broke. "I threw it out days ago. It's gone." I gripped the phone. "Leo, why were you at the Starlight Motel?" I knew the place. It was a rundown motor lodge where people went when they didn't want to be found. He hesitated. I was buying a used CPU cooler. A guy from Craigslist. He wanted to meet in the parking lot. It was a really good deal, Grandpa." Leo was studying engineering just like I had, always tinkering. My mind was racing. The brooch, the motel, the 5 men, and the woman on my porch who was smiling at me. "All right, Leo," I said, my voice strange and distant to my own ears. "You must be mistaken, but thank you for calling. Drive home safe." I hung up before he could argue. I stood there in the silence of my workshop, the smell of sawdust suddenly suffocating. I looked out the window again. The woman was still there, still reading her book, the picture of domestic peace. But a seed of impossible, terrifying doubt had been planted. And the brooch was gone. Anna had told me. She had thrown it away. I walked out of my workshop and across the lawn. My legs felt heavy, like I was moving through wet cement. The woman on the porch looked up as I approached. Her smile was warm. It was Anna's smile. "Ben," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "How was your day in the workshop?" I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. I just stared. Everything looked correct. The silver hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. The fine wrinkles around her eyes, the ones I'd watched form over decades. It was my wife. "Ben, are you all right?" she asked, a slight frown touching her brow. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "I needed a test. Something simple. Something definite." "I'm going to make some tea," I said. "Would you like a cup?" "That sounds lovely," she replied. I went into the kitchen. My hands were shaking. I put the kettle on. I opened the pantry. My tea, Earl Grey, was on the top shelf. Anna's tea chamomile was right next to it. I took down the Earl Grey. I walked back into the living room holding the box. I was thinking of having Earl Grey, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. The woman looked up from her book. Oh, wonderful, she smiled. I'll have a cup with you. The room tilted. I had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. Anna, my wife of 48 years, hated Earl Grey tea. She didn't just dislike it. She despised it. She said it tasted like cheap perfume and drinking a bar of soap. In our entire marriage, I had never once seen her drink a cup. Not once. She was a chamomile woman through and through. I watched her, my heart pounding a sick rhythm against my ribs. I went back to the kitchen, my mind a blank fog. I made 2 cups of Earl Grey. I carried them back out, my hands perfectly steady now. A cold, sharp focus was settling over me. I handed her a cup. Thank you, dear, she said. She raised the cup to her lips and took a sip. A long, slow sip. She didn't wince, she didn't gag. She smiled. That's lovely. I haven't had this in ages. Liar. My mind screamed the word. You have never had this. I sat down in my own chair, the hot mug warming my cold hands. I watched her over the rim. Who was this person? She looked like Anna. She sounded like Anna. But she was drinking Earl Grey. I tried to act normal. We talked about the weather. We talked about the neighbors. All the while I was observing, counting the inconsistencies. Later that evening, I tried another test. I walked up behind her while she was looking out the window. I put my arms around her, resting my chin on her shoulder, just as I had done 1,000 times before. She sighed, content, and leaned back against me. But I wasn't feeling affection. I was analyzing. I inhaled deeply. Nothing. I smelled soap. Just plain odorless ivory soap. My blood ran cold. Anna had worn one perfume, and only one perfume, since I met her at a college dance in 1978. White linen. It was her signature. It was the smell of our life together. The smell of our bedroom. The smell of her skin. It was as much a part of her as her own voice. This woman, this imposter, smelled of nothing. She was a blank slate. I pulled away, mumbling something about checking the locks. My mind was reeling. The tea. The scent. Leo's phone call. This was not a mistake. This was not a coincidence. This was an invasion. But the final undeniable proof came later that night. The detail that confirmed this wasn't just paranoia. It was a fact. Anna has a heart condition. Atrial fibrillation. It's not severe, but it requires medication. A small blue beta blocker. Every single morning. Without it, her heart rhythm becomes erratic. She gets dizzy, lightheaded, and short of breath. I know this because I'm the one who fills her weekly pill organizer every Sunday night. It's our ritual. I waited until I heard the shower running in our bathroom. I crept down the hall. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I opened the bathroom door. Steam filled the air. Through the fogged glass of the shower, I could see her silhouette. On the counter next to the sink was the plastic pill organizer. I picked it up. My fingers fumbled with the clasp. I opened the lid for Tuesday. The small blue pill was still there. She hadn't taken it. This woman, whoever she was, had been in my house all day. She had acted perfectly normal. She had shown no signs of dizziness, no shortness of breath, no heart palpitations. She had functioned perfectly, without the one pill my real wife could not go a single day without. The steam from the shower suddenly felt icy. I backed out of the bathroom, closing the door with a soft click. I went downstairs and stood in the dark living room, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. The woman in my shower was not Anna. which meant Leo was telling the truth. My real wife Anna had been at the Starlight Motel. She was wearing the green brooch, and she was with 5 men in suits. The questions were terrifying. Who was the imposter upstairs? Who had sent her? And where, dear God, where was my real wife? I locked myself in my workshop, the one place that was still truly mine, and I sat in the dark. The smell of sawdust and oil usually calmed me. Now it just felt like the last patch of solid ground. I am 71 years old. I am not a fighter, not in the physical sense. I couldn't throw this woman out. I couldn't call the police. What would I say? That my wife doesn't smell right and is drinking the wrong tea? They would think I was the crazy one. I realized with a chilling certainty that if they, whoever they were, had gone to the trouble of finding a near-perfect double for Anna, they weren't just planning to ask me for money. They were planning to take it. And they wouldn't let a confused old man get in their way. My mind, my logic, my ability to see the details, that was the real threat to them. But what if I wasn't a threat? What if I was exactly what they wanted me to be? A new plan began to form, born not of anger but of cold, clear engineering precision. They expected a 71-year-old man to be forgetful. They expected him to be confused. They were counting on it. Fine. I would give them exactly that. I would not be Ben Croft, the retired engineer. I would become the role they had cast for me, the senile old man fading into the fog. My house was no longer a home. It was a stage, and I would give the performance of my life. The next morning, I began. I walked into the kitchen where the imposter I started calling her Fake Anna, in my head, was making eggs. She smiled brightly. "Good morning, Ben. Sleep well?" I blinked at her, letting my eyes go unfocused for just a second. "Oh, yes. Yes, I think so. What day is it today, dear?" "It's Wednesday, Ben," she said, her voice full of a patient, condescending sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Wednesday, right. Of course." I nodded slowly and sat down at the table. She placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me. I stared at it. After a full minute, I looked up. "Lord, my mind is it's all foggy this morning. What day did you say it was again?" I saw it. A tiny flicker in her eyes. Not just annoyance, but satisfaction. She was ticking a box on a mental checklist. She placed her hand on my shoulder. "It's still Wednesday, sweetheart. Don't you worry your head. I'll take care of everything." I gave her a weak, grateful smile. "Thank you, Anna. I don't know what I'd do without you." I played the part all day. I went to get the mail, then came back inside and forgot why I'd gone out. I left my keys in the mailbox, forcing her to go retrieve them. I lost my glasses 3 times, finally finding them on top of my head, and I gave a theatrical, self-deprecating laugh about losing my marbles. I watched her, and I saw the change. The slight tension she held around me, that sharp-eyed observance, began to dissolve. Her shoulders relaxed. Her smile became more genuine. She stopped watching me like a hawk and started treating me like a piece of furniture. A harmless, slightly broken piece of furniture. It was working. She thought I was oblivious. She thought I was declining. She thought I was easy. Good. That's exactly what I wanted her to think. I waited until I saw her, the imposter, walk out to the garden. She was humming a tune I didn't recognize, and she started pruning Anna's roses. My Anna's roses. The sight of her touching my wife's things, pretending to be her, sent a cold fury through me. I slipped back into my workshop, the one place that was still safe, and locked the deadbolt. This was my sanctuary. Tucked away in an old metal toolbox buried beneath a set of antique wood files was an old-fashioned flip phone. A burner. I'd bought it years ago on a paranoid whim, just in case. I guess just in case had finally arrived. I powered it on. The small green screen glowed faintly in the dim light. My fingers, thick and calloused from decades of work, fumbled with the small plastic buttons as I punched in Leo's number. He picked up on the third ring. "Hello?" His voice was young, hesitant. "Leo," I said, my own voice low, almost a whisper. "It's Grandpa. Listen to me very carefully. Are you alone? Can you talk?" I heard a shuffling sound, then a door clicking shut. "Yeah, I'm alone now. I'm in my dorm room. What's going on, Grandpa?" "You sound weird." I took a deep breath, the air in the workshop thick with the smell of old wood and machine oil. "First," I said, "what I am about to say does not leave this conversation. You cannot, under any circumstances, tell your father. Do you understand me? Not a single word to Patrick." His voice tensed. "Okay. Yeah, I promise. What is it?" "You were right, Leo," I said. The words felt heavy like lead. "You were right about the motel. The woman who is in this house right now, she is not your grandmother." I heard him suck in a sharp breath. I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy. Oh my God. "Grandpa, what's happening? Who is she? Where is Grandma?" "I don't know," I said honestly, and the admission terrified me. "I don't know where Anna is, and I don't know who this woman is, but they are organized, and your father, Leo, your father, is in on it." The silence on the other end was absolute. I had just shattered his world too. "Dad," Leo whispered, "you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I said, my grip tightening on the small phone. "That's why I'm calling you. I have no one else I can trust. I am surrounded. I am playing the part of a confused old man, but I am not. I am wide awake, and I need help. I need you to be my eyes and ears, kiddo. I'm an engineer, but you're the one who understands computers and tracking. I need you." He didn't hesitate. "What do you need me to do, Grandpa? I'm in. Whatever it takes." A wave of relief so strong it almost buckled my knees washed over me. "Just be ready," I said. "I'll call you from this number. Don't call me, don't text me, and delete this call from your history. They are watching." I hung up, put the phone back in its metal tomb, and went back to playing the confused old man. The next step was to confirm Leo's story myself. I needed to see the place. An hour later, I called out to the imposter who was now reading in the living room. "I'm heading out to the lumberyard," I announced, pitching my voice a little louder than necessary. "Need some 2x4s for that bookshelf I'm planning." She barely looked up from her book. "All right, dear. Don't be long, and drive carefully." Her voice was dripping with that fake saccharine concern, the kind you use on a child you don't trust. I grabbed my keys, got into my old Ford pickup truck, and pulled out of the driveway. I drove normally for the first 2 miles, but I didn't go to the lumberyard. I bypassed the exit for Home Depot and kept going, heading straight for Route 9. The Starlight Motel was worse in person than it sounded. The S on its neon sign was dead, so it just read Tarlight, flickering a sick Pepto-Bismol pink against the gray afternoon sky. The paint was peeling off the walls in long strips, and the parking lot was filled with rusting cars and one overturned shopping cart. This was not a place Anna would ever be. The thought of her here with those men, it made me physically ill. I parked my truck at the far end of the lot, my heart pounding. I was just an old man in a flannel shirt. No one would look at me twice. I got out of the truck, my joints aching, and walked toward the small office, a single grime-covered glass door. I had to know. I had to know what happened in this place. I pushed the door open, a small bell tinkling miserably above me. The smell of stale cigarettes and bleach hit me like a wall. The man behind the counter didn't even look up. He was watching a grainy baseball game on a tiny flickering television set that probably hadn't been new since 1995. He looked like he was made of cigarette ash and stale coffee. "Can I help you?" he mumbled, his eyes still glued to the screen. I put my hands on the sticky Formica counter. I'm looking for someone, I said. A woman. She might have stayed here yesterday. About 69, 70 years old. Silver hair, well-dressed. He finally tore his eyes from the TV and gave me a look. A dry, humorless laugh that sounded like cracking gravel escaped his lips. Pal, look around. He gestured to the grimy lobby. You just described half my clientele minus the well-dressed part. You gotta be more specific. This was not a man who responded to pleas for help. He was a man who responded to transactions. I knew this language. I pulled out my wallet, took out a $50 bill, and laid it on the counter. He just stared at it, unimpressed. I sighed, took the 50 back, and replaced it with a crisp $100 bill. His eyes snapped from the money to my face and then back to the money. He picked it up, folded it neatly, and slipped it into his shirt pocket in one smooth, practiced motion. His entire demeanor changed. The fog of indifference vanished. All right, he said, leaning forward conspiratorially. What else you got? She was here yesterday. I said, my voice quiet but firm. She arrived with 5 men in suits. They were driving a black Escalade. His eyes widened just a fraction. Oh, he said, a note of genuine recognition in his voice. You mean that lady? Yeah, I remember her. How could I forget? Not our usual crowd. My heart hammered against my ribs. Tell me, I said. Yeah, she was here. Room 104. Paid cash for the room plus a little extra for me to, not notice them. He tapped his pocket where my $100 now rested. The men, I said, did they stay with her? He shook his head. Nah, just her. The men just met her here. They showed up around noon. Like you said, suits, expensive shoes. They looked like high-powered types. Not happy, though. Looked, I don't know, like real estate developers or something. The kind that knock down old diners to build condos. Real estate developers. The words hung in the stale air, completely out of place. This wasn't what I had expected. What were they doing? Did you hear anything? He shrugged, leaning back. Hey, I just rent the rooms, man. They talked for a few hours. Well, talked might be the wrong word. It sounded like arguing. A lot of it. But she, the lady, your lady, she seemed to be the boss. She was the one paying for everything. In cash. Quiet but tough. She kept them all in line. Anna. My Anna. The boss, where are they now? I asked, my voice dry. I dreaded the answer. Gone, he said, his interest already fading as he glanced back at the baseball game. All of them. They checked out. About 10 this morning. The men left first in their Escalade. She left about an hour later. Different car. A town car, I think. Looked like they were heading out of town for good. They're gone, Pop. You're too late. Gone. The word hit me like a physical blow. I was too late. The trail had gone cold at this miserable, rundown place. I walked out of the office, the bell tinkling mockingly behind me. The pink Tarlight sign flickered in the gray afternoon. I got back in my truck and just sat there, the key in my hand. But I wasn't defeated. I was focused. The clerk's words echoed in my head. Real estate developers. She was the boss. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't some sordid, desperate affair. My mind, the engineer's mind, started connecting pieces I didn't even know I had. This was calculated. This was organized. This was business. And that somehow was infinitely more terrifying. I drove home, the words real estate developers echoing in my head. It didn't make any sense. Anna and I lived a simple, retired life. Our biggest financial decisions were about whether to restain the porch or plan a trip to see the Grand Canyon again. What could she possibly be doing bossing around a room full of developers at a place like the Starlight? As I turned onto my street, my stomach clenched. There was another car in my driveway, a sleek silver BMW that I knew all too well. It was parked right behind the imposter's sensible sedan. My son, Patrick. I parked my truck and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My only son. He worked in finance in the city. He always had expensive tastes, a new watch, a car leased well above his means. He always called my careful saving, my engineering-driven prudence, old-fashioned. I got out of the truck. The sound of their laughter reached me before I even got to the walkway. It was light, casual, and carefree. I rounded the corner of the house and saw them. Patrick, my 45-year-old son, was sitting on the porch. He was in one of Anna's wicker chairs, his suit jacket off his expensive silk tie loosened. And sitting across from him in my chair was the imposter. They were both holding mugs, and they were both laughing. A shaft of late afternoon sun lit the table between them. On it sat the kettle and my box of Earl Grey tea. They were sharing my tea. The laughter died the second Patrick saw me. It vanished as if a switch had been thrown. His smile froze, then reformed itself into something else, something practiced. "Dad," he said, standing up. He sounded overly cheerful. "There you are. We were wondering where you'd gotten off to." The imposter stood up too, moving to his side, placing a hand on his arm in a familiar gesture that felt like a violation. "We were just enjoying a cup of tea, Ben," she said, her voice full of wifely concern. "You were gone so long we were starting to get worried." I looked from her face to my son's. He was looking at her, not at me. He was looking at this stranger with an expression of shared understanding. He knew. He knew she wasn't his mother. And he was here drinking tea with her, laughing with her, while my real wife was God knows where. The pieces in my head, the motel, the developers, the imposter, they weren't just scattered fragments anymore. They were starting to connect, and the picture they were forming was monstrous. And my own son was right in the center of it. Just needed some wood," I mumbled, playing my part. I held up the empty plastic bag I'd grabbed from the truck bed. They were out of the 2x4s I wanted. I'll have to go back tomorrow." Patrick's eyes sharpened. He was assessing me. He and the imposter exchanged a look. It was so fast I would have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. It was a look that said, "See, just like we planned." Patrick put his arm around the imposter's shoulder. "Well, come on, sit down, Dad. We actually wanted to talk to you. In fact, that's why I came by." I let myself be guided to a chair, feigning a bit of a stumble. I sat down heavily, looking confused. "Talk, what about—" Patrick pulled his chair closer. He leaned forward, clasping his hands between his knees. He put on his serious son face, the one he used when he was about to ask for money. "Dad," he began, his voice dropping to a low, somber tone. "Look, Mom and we're worried about you." He gestured to the imposter. "Mom." He had called her Mom. He looked right at this strange woman, this actress, and called her his mother. The casual cruelty of it, the absolute betrayal, took my breath away. I had to force myself to stay in character, to look confused and slightly alarmed. "Worried," I echoed, my voice a weak imitation of itself. "Worried about what, Patrick?" "About your memory, Dad," he said, laying the concern on thick. You've been forgetting things. A lot of things." The imposter chimed in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You left your keys in the mailbox yesterday, Ben. And this morning you asked me what day it was 3 times. We're concerned that things are getting to be too much for you." Patrick nodded, picking up the thread. "The portfolio, Dad. The trust. It's a lot to manage. A lot of paperwork, a lot of decisions. And in your current state, well, Mom and we've been talking." There it was again. Mom and I. A united front. A conspiracy. "We think it's time, Dad," he said, his voice firming up, the fake concern giving way to the businessman underneath. "We think it's time for us to step in, to help." I'm in finance, I know how to handle these things. We want to take that burden off your shoulders. We've already spoken to a lawyer just to see what the options are. A lawyer? I asked, letting my voice tremble just enough. Just to protect you, Dad, Patrick said smoothly. The plan is for me and Mom to take over the management of the trust. We'll handle everything. The bills, the investments, everything. You won't have to worry your head about a single thing ever again. It was a speech. A rehearsed, polished, predatory speech. They were staging an intervention. But it wasn't for my health. It was for my money. My $4 million. The money I had earned over 50 years of hard work. The money I had set aside to care for myself and Anna in our old age. They were trying to steal it. My son and my wife. Except that wasn't my wife, which meant my son and someone else were trying to steal it. And my real wife, Anna, was part of their plan. Whether as a victim or as a willing participant, I didn't know. The clerk's words came back to me. She seemed to be the boss. The cold fury I'd felt in the workshop returned, but this time it was different. It was glacial. It was absolute. They had made a mistake. They had looked at a 71-year-old engineer and seen a doddering old fool. They had mistaken quiet precision for mental decline. They had forgotten that an engineer's entire life is about seeing how the pieces fit. And I was finally seeing it. I saw the whole damned machine. I looked up at my son, the man I had raised, the man who was now trying to erase me. I gave him the most vacant, confused, and terrified look I could muster. "Oh," I whispered, letting my chin tremble. "Oh my, I don't know what to say. Your mother? She thinks this is best." I turned to the imposter. She smiled a sad, pitying smile that was a masterpiece of deceit. "We only want what's best for you, Ben. We love you." I knew then with absolute certainty that I was alone, and I knew exactly what I had to do. In that single devastating moment, the floor didn't just crack beneath me. It vaporized. It wasn't just the words, "take over the management." It was the way he had said it. Mom and I. He had looked at that stranger, that actress, that imposter, and called her his mother. He had aligned himself with her against me. He knew. He had to know. There was no other explanation. This wasn't a case of him being fooled. This was a conspiracy. My son, my only child, the boy I had taught to ride a bike and build model rockets, the man whose college tuition I had paid in full, was actively trying to steal my life. He was sitting on my porch drinking my tea next to a woman who was a lie, and he was trying to have me declared incompetent. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost clean, like a surgical cut. There was no anger, not yet. Just a cold, vast emptiness. I'm not a wealthy man, not in the way Patrick sees the world. I don't own a yacht or a penthouse. I am an engineer. I saved. I was prudent. When I sold my engineering firm 15 years ago, I didn't buy a sports car or fly to Europe. I put the money just over $4 million into an irrevocable trust. It was a safety net. It was designed to provide for me and Anna, my real Anna, for the rest of our lives, to ensure we would never be a burden to pay for any medical care we might need. It was a structure built on logic and love, and Patrick had always hated it. He called it dead money. He with his flashy finance job, his leased BMW, and his condo. He couldn't really afford, saw that $4 million as a resource he was being denied. He was always living paycheck to paycheck. Always just one bad bonus away from disaster. And here was his old-fashioned father, sitting on a pile of cash, refusing to live a little. He wasn't just my son. He was a predator who had been waiting for me to get old. And now he had decided he was tired of waiting. I looked from my son's earnest, lying face to the imposter's mask of gentle concern. They were a team. They had rehearsed this. They saw me as a faulty component, a broken piece of machinery to be set aside. They had underestimated me. They had forgotten I was the one who built the machines. I let my shoulders slump. I let my hand tremble just slightly on the arms of the chair. I looked up at Patrick, forcing a look of utter confusion and fear into my eyes. "Oh," I whispered. I made my voice crack. "Oh my, I don't know what to say, son. Take over. I thought I was doing fine." "We know you did, Dad," Patrick said, placing his hand on my knee. A gesture that was meant to be comforting but felt like a brand. "You've done great, but it's time to rest. Let us handle it." I turned my gaze slow and foggy to the woman standing beside him. "Anna," I asked, my voice weak. You think this is best, you and Patrick?" The imposter smiled, a sad, pitying smile that was a masterpiece of deceit. She kneeled down in front of me, taking my trembling hands in hers. Her hands were soft but cold. "We only want what's best for you, Ben. We love you. We just want you to be safe. Let us take this worry away." I stared into her eyes, looking for any flicker of anything. There was nothing, just a polished performance. I see," I said. I let a single small tear well up in the corner of my eye. I let it roll down my cheek. "Yes, if you and Anna think it's best. Of course, I'm so tired, my mind, it really has been so foggy lately." That was the moment. That was the click of the trap snapping shut. Patrick and the imposter exchanged a look over my bowed head. It was fast. It was subtle. But I saw it. It was a look of pure, unadulterated victory. They had won. The old man had folded. The money was theirs. "Good, Dad," Patrick said, his voice brimming with false relief. "You've made the right choice. We'll bring some papers by tomorrow for you to sign. Just formalities." I think I need to lie down," I murmured, pushing myself up with a groan. It's all a bit much for an old man." "Of course, Ben," the imposter said, helping me up. "You go rest. We'll handle everything." I let them guide me to the door, leaning on them heavily. I shuffled my way up the stairs, each step a performance of frailty. I went into my bedroom, closed the door, and waited. I listened until I heard the front door close, until I heard Patrick's BMW roar to life and speed away. The second I heard his car turn the corner, the trembling stopped. The fog in my eyes vanished. I did not lie down. I walked out of my bedroom, down the back stairs, and straight into my workshop. I locked the deadbolt behind me. The performance was over. I went to the old metal toolbox, dug under the files, and pulled out the burner phone. My hands were perfectly steady as I dialed the number. A number I knew by heart, but had never called for this. A woman's voice answered on the second ring. Sharp, clear, and professional. "Julia Ramsey." "Julia," I said, my voice no longer weak. It was cold. "It's Ben Croft, my old partner's daughter." "Ben, what a surprise. How are you?" Her voice was warm, but I cut through it. "I'm in trouble, Julia. Serious trouble. And what I'm about to tell you is going to sound completely insane." I laid it all out. Every detail. The phone call from Leo, the Starlight Motel, the green brooch, the Earl Grey tea, the beta blocker, the developers, and finally Patrick sitting on my porch with an imposter trying to have me declared incompetent so they could seize my trust. She didn't interrupt. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me I was paranoid. When I finished, there was a beat of silence. It wasn't shock. It was analysis. "Ben," she said, her voice all business now. "This isn't insane. This is a classic, though highly elaborate case of elder financial abuse. They are absolutely trying to file an incompetency petition against you. They're using the imposter to build a false narrative of your decline. We have to move faster than they do. What do we do? I asked. They have a narrative, she said, her voice quick. We need facts. Hard, undeniable, courtroom-proof facts. We need two things right now. One, we need proof that the woman in your house is a fraud. That means we need her DNA, and we need to compare it to a sample from the real Anna. Can you get that? Yes, I said, already forming a plan. I can. Good, she said. Two, we need to find out where the real Anna is and what her involvement is. You said your grandson saw her with developers. That's our lead. They're trying to liquidate your trust. We need to find out why. Get me that DNA. I'll get the court order for the test. And Ben, be careful. You're not a confused old man. You're a witness. Don't let them know. I had my instructions. Get the DNA. It was time for my performance to get a little more physical. I was an old man. Old men are clumsy. Old men spill things. I waited until the next afternoon. The imposter was in the living room reading a magazine, completely at ease. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. I came out feigning confusion again. Anna, dear, I called out, my voice quavering slightly. I was just making some tea. Would you like a cup? She looked up, that same patient, condescending smile on her face. Why, thank you, Ben. That's very thoughtful. Just a little milk, please. I nodded slowly, as if committing it to my faulty memory. I went back and made 2 cups. I put milk in hers. I made sure both were hot, very hot. I put a stack of paper napkins in my shirt pocket. I came back into the living room holding both mugs, my hands visibly shaking. This part wasn't entirely an act. My heart was pounding. Here we are, I said, approaching her chair. And then I stumbled. I let my left foot catch on the edge of the rug. I lurched forward, shouting, "Oh dear!" And the contents of her mug, hot milky tea, sloshed over the rim and directly onto her hand and lap. She screamed. It was a sharp, ugly sound, nothing like Anna's voice. Ben, you clumsy old fool, that's hot! Oh goodness, Anna, I'm so sorry, I cried, pulling the napkins from my pocket. Here, here, I shoved them into her hand. She immediately used one to wipe her mouth where some tea had splashed, and then to blot at her scalded hand. It's burning! She shrieked, jumping up and dropping the soiled napkins on the floor. Get some cold water. Run it under the tap. I ordered, my voice full of panicked concern. She glared at me, clutching her hand, and ran to the kitchen. The moment she was out of sight, I bent down. My back screamed in protest, but I ignored it. I scooped up the used napkins, the ones she had pressed to her hand, and crucially, her mouth. I shoved the wet wad of paper into my pocket. When she came back, a wet towel wrapped around her red hand, I was the picture of a repentant, senile husband. Is it bad? I'm so terribly sorry, dear. I don't know what's wrong with me. She looked at me, her eyes cold. The mask had slipped. Just go sit down, Ben. She hissed, the fake sweetness gone. Just go sit down before you break something else. I had the sample. Now I needed the control. I waited until she was occupied on a long whispered phone call in the garden. I went upstairs to our bedroom. I went to Anna's vanity, a place I hadn't touched. The imposter slept in our bed, but she didn't use this space. It was still Anna's. The smell of white linen, her real perfume, still clung faintly to the air. My heart ached. I opened the top drawer, and there, just as she'd left it, was her old silver-backed hairbrush. I pulled it out. It was tangled with strands of her long silver hair. Real hair. Anna's hair. I carefully pulled them free, placed them in a small plastic bag from my workshop, and put the brush back. I now had both pieces. I met Julia an hour later in the parking lot of the public library. I handed her the two small labeled bags. "One is from the imposter," I said. "Saliva on a napkin. The other is from a hairbrush my wife has used for 20 years. Julia took them, her face grim. "Good. I'll get these rushed to the lab. This will give us the undeniable proof that she is a fraud. Now for phase 2. Anna, we need to find her." I nodded. "My grandson, Leo." I went straight back to my workshop. The imposter was nursing her hand and was in no mood to be disturbed, which was perfect. I locked the deadbolt and pulled out the burner phone. "Leo," I said when he answered, "it's time. I need you to do 2 things." "I'm ready, Grandpa," he said. His voice was steady. He was a good kid. "Julia, my lawyer, has given me the legal clearance. First, Patrick. I'm the primary account holder on our family phone plan. Julia has confirmed I have the right to install security software on any device on that plan. I'm sending you the authorization code. I need you to put tracking software on your father's phone. I need to know where he goes, who he calls. Can you do it remotely?" There was a pause and I heard the clicking of a keyboard. "His phone is a new model," Leo said. "But, yeah, with this authorization and the password, I already know. For the account, I can push an update to his carrier profile. It'll look like a routine security patch. He'll never know. I can have it active in an hour. It will log his location calls, everything." "Good," I said, relieved. "That's my engineer. Now the second part. The woman in the house. The imposter. I need to know where she goes when she isn't here." "An AirTag," Leo said immediately. "Or a tile. Something small." "Exactly," I said. "I bought a pack of them. I told her I was getting trackers for my keys because I'm so forgetful. I need you to get one into her purse. A place she won't look." "How, I can't just walk in," Leo said. I looked through the workshop window. The imposter was on the porch, her feet up, a bag of frozen peas on her hand. Her purse was on the hall table just inside the front door. "You won't have to, so," I said. "I'll create the distraction. Be here in 20 minutes. Park down the street. When I call you, walk to the front door, but don't knock. Just wait. I'll get her out of the house." This was it. The silent investigation was turning into an active operation. We weren't just watching. We were setting the traps. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. I played the role of the broken old man. I spilled coffee. I forgot names. I stared blankly at the television. The imposter treated me like a harmless pet, and my son Patrick called twice, his voice full of that same sickening false concern, asking if I was doing okay, and reminding me he'd be by soon with those papers. I told him that would be fine. I told him his mother was taking good care of me. I spent every moment I could in the workshop, the burner phone in my hand, waiting. On Friday morning, it finally rang. The caller ID just showed a blocked number. I flipped it open. "Ben." It was Julia. Her voice was sharp, no trace of emotion. "Ben, I got the results from the lab. It's definitive." I held my breath. And the DNA from the hairbrush is a clear maternal match to your son Patrick. It's Anna. But the DNA from the napkin, it's not even close. 0 genetic relationship. No match. Nothing. The woman in your house is a complete stranger, Ben. She is, legally speaking, a fraud. We have them. I closed my eyes. It wasn't relief, exactly. It was confirmation. The first steel trap had snapped shut. "Thank you, Julia," I said. "What's next?" "Now we find Anna," she said. "Now we find out why. Call your grandson, see what he's found. I'm filing an emergency motion as we speak." I was about to hang up and call Leo when the phone beeped. An incoming call, on the burner. It was Leo's number. I had never been more grateful for call waiting. "Julia, hold on," I said. I clicked over. "Leo." What is it? Grandpa. Oh my God, Grandpa, it's happening. It's all happening right now. His voice was a torrent. He was speaking so fast I could barely keep up. The software on Dad's phone, it's working perfectly. He's been on the move all morning. He's driving downtown. He just parked. He's at a big office building on Main Street. A law firm, Grandpa. Hargrove Finch and Associates. He went inside about 2 minutes ago. A law firm, I said, my mind racing. That's where they were bringing the papers. But that's not all, Grandpa. That's not even the half of it, he said, his voice cracking with excitement. I've been pinging Grandma's real phone. The one the imposter claimed she lost somewhere in the house 2 days ago. The one she said the battery must have died on. She was lying. What are you talking about, Leo? The Find My signal. Grandpa, it just came on. Someone just turned her phone on. And guess where it is? Guess where, Leo? I demanded. It's at the exact same address. The law firm Hargrove Finch and Associates. Her real phone is in that building right now with Dad. My blood turned to ice. Leo, I'm not done, he almost shouted. The AirTag, the one you planted, the tracker in the imposter's purse, I've been watching it all morning. She left the house 20 minutes ago. She's heading downtown. She's on Main Street right now. She's at the same building, Grandpa. She's parking. All 3 of them home. Dad, Grandma's real phone, and the imposter. They are all at the same law firm. Right now. They're all meeting. I clicked back over to Julia. Julia, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I know where they are. I stood there in the workshop, the phone still hot in my hand. It all clicked into place, the entire terrible complex machine. It wasn't one or the other. It wasn't my son holding my wife captive. It wasn't my son being fooled by a brilliant con artist. It was all of them. It was a team. My son Patrick, my real wife Anna, and the woman pretending to be my wife. They were all in on it. They were working together. They were having a meeting, a business meeting. The real estate developers, the motel, the imposter, the petition for incompetency. They were all pieces of one single horrifying plan, and they were all in one room right now, probably celebrating. I changed out of my dusty work clothes in the back of Julia's car. I put on the spare suit I kept for funerals. It seemed appropriate. Julia drove her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She didn't speed. She drove with a cold, legal precision. They're arrogant, Ben, she said, her voice quiet but vibrating with intensity. They think you're a non-issue. They think they've already won. That's why they're all meeting together, to celebrate. That's the mistake that will bring them down. I just stared out the window as the suburbs gave way to the steel and glass towers of downtown. The imposter, I understand. Patrick. God help me, I'm starting to understand his greed. But Anna, my wife. Why Julia? Why would she do this? Money, Ben. Julia said, her voice flat. It's almost always money, and when it's not, it's revenge. Maybe it's both. She pulled into an underground garage. Hargrove Finch and Associates was carved into a marble plaque by the elevator. We rode up in silence. The lobby on the 34th floor was all glass and blonde wood. It smelled like old money and quiet power, a world away from the Starlight Motel. Julia walked right past the receptionist, checking her phone. Leo's pinging them. Conference room 34B, down this hall. We walked down a long corridor carpeted so thick our footsteps made no sound. We stopped outside us, a set of double doors made of frosted glass. You couldn't see details, just shadows, silhouettes. Julia put her hand on the door handle. Ready? I nodded. I wasn't. But it didn't matter. She pushed the door open, not all the way, just 6 inches. Just enough for us to see inside. It wasn't a celebration. It was a boardroom meeting. They were all there. All the pieces. At a long polished mahogany table sat the 5 men from the motel. Just as Leo had described. Expensive suits, grim faces, briefcases open. They weren't developers. They looked like a board of directors. At the head of the table sat Anna. My Anna. My real wife. She was dressed in a sharp, dark blue power suit I had never seen before. Her hair was perfectly styled. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't a prisoner. She was in charge. She was holding a pen, tapping it against a stack of documents. On one side of her sat my son Patrick. He was hunched over the table, nodding eagerly at something one of the men was saying. And on the other side of her, sitting in a chair slightly back from the table, looking nervous and completely out of place, was the imposter. Fake Anna. She was looking at my real wife with an expression of obedience. They were all there. My son, my wife's double, and the 5 men from the motel. They were all in one room. My heart stopped. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't a simple case of my son being greedy. This was an operation, a coup, and my wife, my Anna, was sitting at the head of the table. We stood outside the frosted glass door, 2 ghosts listening to a funeral. My funeral. Julia had her phone in her hand, the screen dark, but I knew the red recording light was on. She held it steady, aimed at the door. Inside, I heard a voice I knew better than my own. But this version was cold, sharp, and confident. It was Anna, my real Anna, and she was in complete control. The petition for incompetency was filed this morning at 9:04. She said, her voice clear and precise like an attorney addressing a jury. There was no emotion in it, no regret, just business. It includes 2 sworn affidavits testifying to his cognitive decline. I flinched. Affidavits. One from my son Patrick, I was sure, and the other from the imposter. The woman they had hired to witness the decline they had orchestrated. One of the men at the table, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, spoke up. Is that enough? These things can be challenged. They won't be, Anna stated, cutting him off. My husband, Ben, is not in a state to challenge anything. Our son Patrick will attest to it. And our house guest, she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice, has done a wonderful job of documenting his day-to-day confusion. He's been leaving keys in the refrigerator. He forgets what day it is. He's a mess. I felt Julia's hand on my arm, a silent signal to stay calm. Anna continued, her voice like ice. But the affidavits are just the failsafe. The real leverage is my power of attorney. The one he signed over to me 10 years ago when he had his heart surgery. It gives me full authority over all his financial assets contingent on his incapacitation, which as of this morning's filing is legally in effect. She tapped her pen on the table. A sharp, definitive click. So here is the timeline, she said, her voice dropping into a register of command. With the petition filed and my POA activated, we can move to liquidate the entire trust by close of business this Friday. Liquidate the entire trust. My $4 million, my life's work, gone in a day. Patrick's voice, eager and pathetic, chimed in. Our legal team is ready, Mom. The paperwork is pre-filed. It's just a matter of signatures. Mom. He called her Mom. His real mother. And they were partners in this. Then the final piece clicked into place. The gravelly-voiced man spoke again. And the land. You're certain this liquidation frees up the Pine Valley Preserve? My heart stopped. Not just my money. My legacy. Yes, Mr. Hargrove, Anna said smoothly. That is the entire point. The Pine Valley Preserve, as my husband insists on calling it, is not a preserve at all. It's a privately held asset, purchased and funded entirely by the trust. The trust's conservation status is just a legal shield Ben created. It has no federal protection. It's just his hobby. His hobby. 10 years of my life. 10 years of fighting off developers, of working with ecologists, of pouring my own money and soul into keeping that one last piece of wilderness safe. The place I had planned to leave to the state, to the public, so that children like Leo could see something wild. Anna had always hated it. She called it my dirt museum. Once the trust is liquidated, Anna's cold voice continued, the funding for all of Ben's frivolous legal protections vanishes. The land reverts to a simple asset, which I will then have the authority to sell. And as we've discussed, gentlemen, the conservation land will be yours to develop by the 1st of next month. I finally understood. The developers at the motel. This wasn't just about stealing my $4 million. That was just the first step. This was about unlocking the land. The land was worth 10 times that, maybe 20. They weren't just robbing me. They were liquidating my entire life. They were going to pave my legacy and build a shopping mall on top of it. And my wife, my partner of 48 years, was the one holding the gavel. I stood there frozen, the sound from the room washing over me like icy water. The Pine Valley Preserve. It wasn't just my money. It was my legacy. It was the one thing I had built that I truly believed would outlast me. It was the whole reason I had protected the trust so fiercely. It all made a horrible, perfect kind of sense. The developers at the motel, Anna's constant simmering resentment over the past 10 years. Her complaints that I was throwing good money after bad, that I was obsessed with dirt and trees instead of enjoying our retirement. She had always hated it. She saw the preserve as a $4 million monument to my stubbornness, a fortune I was wasting on lawyers and ecologists, instead of spending on cruises and condos. And Patrick, my son, he was just like her. He saw the trust as his inheritance, and I was spending it. He saw the land as a locked vault, and he wanted the key. He didn't see the old-growth oaks or the protected watershed. He saw undeveloped acreage. He saw dollar signs. This entire elaborate, cruel, and monstrous charade. It wasn't just to steal my retirement fund. That was just the key. The prize was the land. That's what the 5 men in suits wanted. They were the developers I had been fighting in court for a decade. And my wife. My wife was handing them the victory. My entire life's work. The 10 years I had spent painstakingly acquiring those parcels of land one by one. The endless town hall meetings, the lobbying, the legal battles to get it zoned as a permanent conservation area. I had poured my heart and my fortune into that land. It was my one great good thing. And the trust was the heart of it. The trust was the legal entity that owned the land. The trust was what paid the lawyers, what funded the ecological studies, what kept the Hargrove Finch and Associates of the world at bay. I finally saw the full machine they had built. It was brilliant in its own sociopathic way. Step 1, neutralize me. They couldn't just ask for the money. I would never sell. So they had to remove me from the equation. Step 2, the incompetency plea. They needed to prove I was unfit. But I wasn't. So they hired an actress, the imposter, to move into my home. Her job wasn't just to fool me. Her job was to be a witness. To be the one to testify with a tear in her eye that dear old Ben was losing his mind. She was there to create the evidence, to document the decline that Patrick and Anna could then present to a judge. Step 3, the legal checkmate. With the petition filed, Anna could activate her power of attorney. The one I had given her in good faith, thinking of a future where I might actually be sick, where I would need her to make decisions. They were using my own love and foresight as a weapon against me. Step 4. Liquidate the trust. With her POA active and my incompetency proven, Anna would have the full legal right to do what I never would. Dissolve the trust. Cash it out. Step 5. The payoff. The moment the trust is dissolved, the funding for the Pine Valley Preserve's legal defense vanishes. The land reverts from a protected entity to just an asset, a piece of property on a balance sheet. And step 6, sell that asset to the highest bidder. To the 5 men in suits sitting right in that room who had been waiting for this moment for 10 years. I had been played so completely. My son's greed, my wife's resentment, they had found common ground. And that common ground was a plan to sell my soul. The woman in my house, the fake Anna, she wasn't even a major player. She was just a tool, a glorified babysitter hired to keep me docile and confused, to feed me the lines they needed to hear, while the real Anna was here in this high-rise office, closing the deal of a lifetime. My legacy wasn't just being stolen. It was being auctioned off by the 2 people I had loved most in the world. I put my hand on the polished wooden door, the wood cool and heavy beneath my palm. And I pushed. It swung open smoothly, silently, on well-oiled hinges. Julia was right beside me, a briefcase in her hand, her expression like stone. We stepped into the room. The sound stopped. Not just the talking, but all of it. The rustle of papers, the tapping of Anna's pen against the mahogany, the sound of breathing. It all just ceased. It was the most absolute, suffocating silence I have ever experienced. 10 pairs of eyes snapped to the doorway. 10 pairs of eyes stared at me. I was supposed to be at home, sitting in my chair, forgetting what day it was. I was supposed to be a ghost, and I had just walked into my own funeral. I saw the imposter first. She was in a chair against the far wall away from the table. She looked small. She went pale, her eyes wide with pure animal terror, and she seemed to try to shrink into the wall itself. She knew in that instant the game was over. I saw the 5 developers. Their faces were a mask of confusion, annoyance, and impatience. Who was this old man who had dared to interrupt their closing? I saw my son, Patrick. His mouth had fallen open. The color had drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. His eyes were wide, not just with shock, but with a sudden dawning dread. And then I looked at the head of the table. I looked at my wife, Anna. She didn't move a muscle. Her hand, the one holding the pen, was still suspended in midair, a quarter inch above her legal pad. The sharp, confident, ruthless CEO I had heard through the door vanished in the blink of an eye. In her place was a woman, a guilty woman, who had just been caught. The blood drained from her face, leaving her a waxy, translucent white. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw no love. I saw no regret. I saw no apology. I just saw the cold, hard shock of a complex machine breaking down. The silence stretched, becoming brittle, agonizing. It felt like a full minute, though it was probably only 5 seconds. It was Patrick who broke it. He was the first one to find his voice. He shot up from his chair, his hands slamming down on the table. The chair legs scraped loudly against the floor. His face, which had been pale with shock, was now flooding with a dark, blotchy red. He wasn't just shocked anymore. He was furious. "Dad!" he yelled. His voice was high, cracking with a panic he couldn't control. "What are you doing here?" He pointed a shaking finger at me, his eyes wild. "You can't be here. You're supposed to be at home. You're supposed to be—" He couldn't say it. He couldn't say confused. He couldn't say incompetent. His accusation hung in the air, a full and complete confession. He wasn't asking what I was doing here out of concern for my health. He was condemning me. He was furious that the key to his new fortune had just unlocked its own cage and walked into the room. He had just admitted everything. While Patrick was yelling, his voice cracking, I saw a movement in the corner of my eye. The imposter. "Fake Anna!" She was on her feet, grabbing her purse from the floor, trying to sidle along the wall and slip out the door behind us. She was almost at the threshold when Julia, without ever taking her eyes off the table, simply took one step to her left, blocking the doorway. The woman froze. Julia didn't even look at her. She just said, her voice cutting through Patrick's rant like a razor. Don't move. I'm an officer of the court, and the police are on their way. The imposter turned white and sank back against the wall, trapped. I didn't care about her. I didn't care about the developers who were now staring at us, their expressions turning from confusion to anger. I didn't even care about Patrick, who was still sputtering, his face a blotchy red. My eyes were only on one person. I walked into the room. My footsteps made no sound on the absurdly thick carpet. I walked past my son. I walked past the developers. I walked right to the head of that long, polished table until I was standing directly in front of my wife. I looked at her. The real Anna. The woman I had shared a bed with for 48 years. The woman I had built a life with, had a child with, had grown old with. She was staring at me, her face a mask of pale, stunned disbelief. The pen had finally fallen from her hand and rolled onto the legal pad. I let the silence stretch. I let her sit in it. I let her feel the weight of my eyes, the reality of my presence. I was not a ghost. I was not a confused old man. I was her husband, and I was here. Finally, I spoke. My voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just tired. 48 years, Anna, I said quietly. All of it. Was it for this? Was it all a lie, this entire performance? I gestured to the imposter cowering by the door. This actress. You put an actress in our home, in our bed. You had me declared incompetent. You were going to erase me. I leaned in just a fraction. For what? For a shopping mall. You were going to sell my life, Anna. For a shopping mall. For a second, she just stared at me. Her mask of shock didn't crumble. It shattered. It exploded. The blood rushed back into her face in a dark, violent tide. Her eyes, which had been wide with shock, narrowed into slits of pure, unadulterated hatred. A rage so intense it was shocking, a rage I had never ever seen erupted from her. Yes! She shrieked, her voice a raw, ugly sound that I didn't recognize. She slammed both of her fists down on the mahogany table. The water glasses jumped. The developers flinched. Yes, for a shopping mall, for a condo in Florida, for a cruise, for anything other than your stupid, worthless, boring life. The cold, calculating CEO was gone, replaced by this screaming, furious stranger. Your life, she spat the word at me. What life, Ben? The life where I got to watch you pour our money, my money, into a patch of dirt for 10 years. I wasted the best years of my life. The last good years I have. Watching you protect trees, I supported you. I played the part. I was the good, quiet, supportive wife while you built your monument to yourself. I was done, Ben. I am done. She was on her feet now, leaning across the table, her face contorted. I've been living in that same boring middle-class house for 40 years. I deserved more. We deserved more, but you and your noble, stupid principles. You were always protecting something, always the righteous engineer, too good for a little luxury. She pointed a shaking finger at me. That money, she hissed, that $4 million, it should have been ours to spend, ours to live on, not to be locked away in your stupid trust, not to be thrown away year after year paying lawyers to protect a bunch of squirrels. Her chest was heaving. She was breathless. She knew she had lost, and so she was finally telling the truth. You wouldn't listen, Ben. You never listened to me. You were too stubborn, too self-righteous. So yes, I did it. I did what I had to do. I made a decision, a business decision. I took what was mine, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you. Patrick's face, which had been red with anger, twisted into something else. A smug, pitying, superior sneer. He let out a short, barking laugh. It was a terrible sound. You really don't get it, do you, old man? He sneered, shaking his head. He looked around at the developers, at his mother, as if to say, Can you believe this guy? It's too late, Dad. he said, his voice dripping with condescension. You can't stop this. The wheels are already in motion. We filed the incompetency petition this morning, at 9:04 a.m. to be exact. He tapped his temple. Legally, you're not all there. Legally, you don't have the capacity to make decisions. As of this morning, Mom, he gestured to Anna, has full power of attorney. She has full control of everything, the trust, the money, the land. It's over. He actually smiled, a broad, triumphant, hateful smile. So you can stand here all you want, Dad. You can yell, you can cry. It doesn't matter, you're just a crazy old man in a suit. You can't stop us. You have no power here. Actually, a new voice cut through the room, clear, cold, and absolute. It was Julia. She stepped forward, placing her sleek black briefcase on the mahogany table with a solid, definitive thud. Patrick's smile wavered. Who the hell are you? I am Julia Ramsey, she said. I'm an officer of the court, and I am Mr. Croft's legal counsel. She flipped the latches on the briefcase. You're right about one thing, Mr. Croft, she said to Patrick. The wheels are in motion, just not yours. She turned to the developers. Gentlemen, I am advising you to terminate this meeting immediately. You are currently in the process of conspiring to commit a federal crime, specifically elder financial abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. The men sputtered, but it was Anna who spoke. That's ridiculous. We are acting on a legal power of attorney to manage my husband's assets. Are you? Julia said, her voice dangerously pleasant. She pulled out a file. Let's talk about that. To activate that POA, you first had to file a petition for incompetency, which you did at 9:04 this morning. A petition based on what exactly? On your testimony. Anna, on your testimony, Patrick. And I'm assuming on the testimony of... Julia's eyes snapped to the imposter cowering by the door. On the testimony of Ms. Sarah Jenkins, a struggling actress hired for $2,000 a week to impersonate Mrs. Croft and document Mr. Croft's decline. The imposter let out a small sob. Patrick and Anna froze. Ms. Jenkins has been in police custody for the last hour. Julia lied beautifully and has already provided a full signed confession in exchange for immunity. The imposter, hearing this, shrieked, He's lying, I didn't. They made me. Julia ignored her. She pulled out another document. And then there's this, the DNA report, comparing a sample from a hairbrush used by the real Mrs. Croft for 20 years to a sample of saliva taken from a napkin used by Ms. Jenkins yesterday. They don't match. Shocking. She tossed the report on the table. And finally, she said, tapping her phone, we have the full legally obtained audio recording of this entire meeting where you all very clearly and calmly outlined your conspiracy to fraudulently declare Mr. Croft incompetent in order to illegally liquidate his assets and sell his protected land. She looked at Patrick, her smile gone. Your petition, Mr. Croft, is not just void. It is evidence. It is the cornerstone of a massive criminal fraud case. You have no power here. Julia's words hung in the air, thick and heavy as lead. The room was silent again, but this time it was the silence of a failed engine, the silence of a machine that has just seized. Anna was the first to recover. Her face, which had been pale with shock, flushed with that same dark, ugly rage. She actually laughed, a short, sharp barking sound completely devoid of humor. Fine, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. Fine, so you have some audio, you have a DNA test, so it's messy, so it takes longer. It doesn't matter, you old fool. She slammed her hand on the table again. The money is still tied to me. That trust is our trust. I am still your wife. You can't just erase 48 years with a fancy lawyer. I am entitled to half of everything, and I will get it. Patrick nodded, a thin, desperate smile returning to his face. She's right, Dad. It's marital property. You can't cut her out. You can't cut me out. We'll see you in court. You really should have read the documents, Anna, Julia said, her voice cutting cleanly through his bluster. She turned to the large monitor on the wall that the developers had been using for their presentation. She unplugged their laptop and plugged in her own. A document appeared on the screen. You're right about one thing, Anna, Julia said, her voice calm like a professor addressing a lecture hall. The money was tied to you. But Ben isn't just a sentimental old man. He's an engineer, and a good engineer. Always builds a failsafe. I watched Anna's face as she squinted at the screen. When Ben established his $4 million trust 15 years ago, Julia continued, he did it with extreme precision. It is an irrevocable trust. That means not even Ben could change it. It was designed to be a fortress. You, Anna, were named as the lifetime income beneficiary. That meant you were entitled to all the interest and income the trust generated for the rest of your life. A very comfortable arrangement. See? Anna hissed at me. Income for life. It's mine. The income, yes, Julia said, but not the principal, never the principal. Ben wanted to protect that. He wanted it to go to his grandchildren and to his preserve after you were gone. Julia used a laser pointer to highlight a section of text on the screen. But Ben was worried. He was worried that one day someone might get greedy. He was worried that someone might try to break the fortress. So he had his lawyers add a very specific, custom-drafted provision. You might call it a morality clause. We called it the engineer's fail-safe. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning. This clause, Julia said, her voice clear and precise, is legally binding and non-negotiable. It states, and I quote, in the event that the primary income beneficiary Anna Croft or the secondary beneficiary Patrick Croft. Patrick went rigid. Should at any time take any legal action, file any petition, or conspire in any way to declare the founder Benjamin Croft legally incompetent, or should they attempt to illegally seize, liquidate, or gain control of the principal assets of the trust against the founder's stated wishes. Julia paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then, effective immediately upon the filing of such a petition, both Anna Croft and Patrick Croft are to be considered predeceased in the eyes of the trust. They are to be immediately and permanently struck from the list of beneficiaries. All rights, all income, all claims are voided, permanently. Anna's face was a mask of white, uncomprehending horror. She was staring at the words, her lips moving silently. Julia looked at her watch. As you so helpfully pointed out, Patrick, you and your mother filed that incompetency petition this morning, at 9:04 a.m. She clicked to the next slide. As of 9:04 a.m., both of you were permanently and irrevocably disinherited. You didn't just fail to take the money. You triggered the fail-safe that ensures you will never see a single dime of it, ever again. Patrick's face was a mask of disbelief. He was shaking his head, a strangled laugh coming from his throat. No, that's not legal. You can't just delete us. He looked around wildly, first at his mother, who was staring at the screen, her face as white as paper, and then at the 5 developers who were now looking at Anna with expressions of pure fury. So where does the money go? Patrick finally shrieked, his voice cracking like a teenager's. If it's not ours, where does it go? It has to go somewhere. It reverts to you, doesn't it? He spat at me. This is just another trick. Ben can't touch the principal, Julia said, her voice impossibly calm. That's the irrevocable part. He locked himself out, just like he locked you out. He wanted to protect it even from himself. She clicked the remote and the document on the screen scrolled to the final page. Section 9, Contingent Beneficiary. The fail-safe clause, Julia explained, stipulates that in the event of the beneficiary's legal predecease, the entire principal of the trust, all $4 million, and all assets held within it, are to be transferred immediately and in their entirety to the named contingent beneficiary. She used the laser pointer, and a single bright red dot landed on the screen. It landed on one name. "Congratulations," Julia said, her voice echoing in the dead silence of the room. "Leo Croft." The name just hung there. Leo, my grandson. Patrick stared at it. He stared at his own son's name, the name of the one person he had dismissed, the one person he had told me not to bother. He made a sound, a high, thin, wailing sound, and his legs seemed to give out. He stumbled backwards and collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands just rocking back and forth. "No, no, no, no." The lead developer, the one Anna had called Hargrove, stood up. He was a big man, and his face was a dark, dangerous red. He pointed a thick finger, not at me, not at Julia, but at Anna. "Our deal was with you, Anna," he growled, his voice a low threat. "You gave us assurances. You guaranteed that land. We have contracts. We're suing you. We will take everything." Just as he finished his sentence, the conference room doors swung open again. This time it wasn't me. It was two uniformed police officers. Julia nodded at them. "Thank you for the timely arrival, officers. That's Anna Croft. That's Patrick Croft. And that's Sarah Jenkins. They're the ones you're here for." The ensuing chaos was just noise, shouting, accusations, the click of handcuffs. I didn't watch. I just turned, and Julia and I walked out of the room. We met Leo in the lobby downstairs. Julia must have called him. He was just standing by the elevators, his backpack on, looking completely shell-shocked. He had been listening to the whole thing on a live feed from Julia's phone. He looked at me, his eyes wider than I'd ever seen them. "Grandpa, is that real? The whole thing?" I walked over to him. I put my hand on his shoulder, his strong, young shoulder. The lobby was all marble and glass, cold and indifferent. But in that moment I felt a peace I hadn't felt in weeks. "It's real, Leo," I said. He shook his head, still not understanding. "But why me?" I looked at him, my grandson, the engineer. "They forgot something, Leo," I said, my voice quiet. "They forgot what I was. A good engineer doesn't just build things. He builds safeguards. He builds in a fail-safe just in case the whole machine tries to tear itself apart. My name is Benjamin Croft, and at 71 years old, I've learned the hardest lesson of my life. We build our foundations on the assumption of love and trust, especially with family. But I learned that blind trust is not a virtue, it's a vulnerability. My love for my wife and son made me ignore the resentment and greed that festered right in front of me for years. In the end, it wasn't my sentimentality that saved me. It was my precision. It was the part of me they dismissed as old-fashioned and stubborn. They forgot I was an engineer. True security isn't just hoping for the best. It's about having a fail-safe, a logical plan designed to withstand the one storm you never ever thought would come. What would you have done in my position? And have you ever had to build a fail-safe in your own life?